Hi, I'm Andy and welcome to a Watch Crave video. In this video, we will be having a look at the Watch Dives WD6101. The watch itself is a heavy homage to the Seiko Prospex SPB301J, Save the Ocean Special Edition. This particular Seiko watch was released in June 2022 and is a limited edition release to another popular re-release, the SPB151, the re-released Captain Willard. Now, being a guy with small wrists, big watches like these are rarely on my radar. After all, my tiny wrist usually struggles with anything over 40mm. A while ago, however, I got my hands on the Steel Dive SD1970, a homage to the SPB151, and developed a liking to the unique case shape. Despite the big case size, the watch fit nicely on my wrist thanks to the female end links. This Watch Dives version looks to be using the same identical case and a very similar bracelet, so I was quite keen to check it out. In case you haven't heard about Watch Dives, they are a Chinese watch distributor who also produce their own homage watches. The watch can be bought from their website and usually retails at around $99. However, you may be able to get it for a bit cheaper during the sales. As of this video, the watch currently has two variations, a black or blue bezel. I actually purchased the black bezel variant, but after waiting for a month and being told that there's a shortage of parts for the black bezel, I gave up and switched to the blue one. It is a bit disappointing, since it looks like the black bezel is the same one used by Watch Dives on their other Willard homages. Anyway, as with all Watch Dives watches, the watch comes in a Pelican case. There's also a guarantee card, a user manual, and some tools for sizing the bracelet. Moving on to the specs and measurements. This watch has the exact same specs as the Steel Dive, so I'll quickly go over them. The diameter measures at a whopping 43.8mm, it is 13.5mm thick, the lug width is 20mm, the lug-to-lug length is 46.8mm, the watch glass is a box flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating. The water resistant rating is 200 meters. I'm not sure if it will actually survive that depth, but it should be fine for the pool. Size down for my 6.2 inch wrist, it weighs in at 167 grams. Finally, it's running with the ever reliable NH35 movement. The NH35 is an automatic movement that beats at 21,600 beats per hour. The movement supports hacking and hand winding. It has a power reserve of 41 hours, and the out-of-the-box accuracy rating is plus 40 seconds to minus 20 seconds per day. This watch is running at plus 11 seconds per day. Not too bad in my opinion. Onto the design of the watch. The watch sports the unique turtle case shape. This case shape was created by Seiko way back in 1976 and is quite popular with the Seiko crowd. The case is brush finish on top and polished on the sides. The finishing quality is identical to the Steel Dives. The back of the case is also brush finish. We have a screw down case back with some text and a massive logo engraved. Pretty much the same as the Steel Dives, except we have a Watch Dive logos instead. The crown is screwed down and signed with the Watch Dives logo. It sits at the 4 o'clock position instead of the usual 3 o'clock. It is smooth and easy to unscrew. One positive thing here is that it is easier to screw back in when compared to the crown action on the Steel Dives. Above the crown, we have a coin edge bezel. Just like the Steel Dive, it is a unidirectional rotating bezel, 120 clicks. The bezel is easy to grip and it's easy to rotate, another plus point for the Watch Dives. There's also a tiny bit of backplay, which is pretty normal. The bezel insert is made of ceramic, and the markers are fully loomed with BGW9. The bezel insert design is simple, and is quite different from the watch's homaging, as the bezel insert on that watch has a fair bit more texture. For the bracelet, we have a stainless steel bracelet that is brush finish on top and polished on the sides. It starts at 20mm at the lug and tapered down to 18mm. All links, including the end links, are solid. However, the links are held together by pins instead of screws. The bracelet is very similar, if not identical to the Steel Dives. I wouldn't be surprised if all the parts from these watches come from the same factory. When it comes to the clasp, this is where Steel Dive and Watch Dives differ slightly. Both clasps are mill and push pins operated. However, the Watch Dives version does not have a safety latch, making the clasps a bit easier to open and close. The clasp is signed with the Watch Dive logo, the top and side are brush finish, and we have a polished edge in between. The clasp has 6 micro adjustment slots, so there should be no issue getting the right fit. Now this is where I had a big problem with this watch. Upon receiving the watch, the bottom part of the clasp was quite sharp. On top of that, there was a really sharp middle point poking out from this part. Unfortunately, I did not notice it and actually got cut when trying on the watch. I've put a few sharp AliExpress watches on my wrist before, but this is the first one that actually drew blood. Anyway, the bottom part and the middle burr has since been sanded down by a small hand sander. While I don't think this is a common thing, as I do have another Steel Dive watch and have had no problem with the clasps, I do still caution you to check for sharp edges to avoid cases like this. Moving on to what most of you are here for, the dial. We have a decent textured dial. The texture is supposed to represent glaciers, and I suppose it does look a bit like it. I think the dial texturing can be improved to make it pop a bit more, but that might be asking for too much if you consider the fact that this watch is under $100. Under the 12 o'clock marker, we have a printed Watch Dive logo. Above the 6 o'clock, we have the automatic text and water rating. Then we have the white date window at the 3 o'clock position. The white date window works really well with the rest of the dial. At the edge of the dial, we have a printed chapter ring and a white unprinted chapter ring to cover the re-hole. Now, some of you might have already noticed, but if we zoom in a bit here, you can see what seems to be a speck of dust on the chapter ring. Unfortunately, this little black dot here is a QC issue instead of dust. I've opened up the watch to try and remove it and found that it's just a simple misprint. While this is not a deal breaker, it does subtract some point from the watch. Similar to the Steel Dive, the indices are applied and well finished. They are also filled with white BGW9 lume. For the hands, they are based on the SPB301J and are slightly different from the Steel Dives. The hour and minute hands on the Steel Dives are flat, whereas the Watch Dive one has a nice curvature to them. The second hand is also a bit different. I mean, it's obviously blue, but the tip is a tad different as well. Similar to the indices, the hands lume are also white BGW9. Despite the white dial and white hands, the watch is fairly legible even from far away. When I reviewed the Steel Dive, I was a bit disappointed that the lume color of the dial and bezel did not match. However, since the Watch Dives use the same BGW9 lume for both dial and bezel, we finally have matching lume. The lumes are bright and last for quite a while. Quite good if you consider the low price of this watch. Similar to the Willard Homage, the watch fits nicely on my wrist thanks to the short lug-to-lug length of 47mm and the female end lengths. The watch is heavy, but is comfortable since the weight is distributed evenly. I wore this for a day without any discomfort whatsoever. So, what's my verdict for this watch? Well, the first pro this watch has is the price. At under $100, it's a good value proposition for its specs. The watch has a pretty nice texture dial, the indices and hands are well finished, and the watch is fairly legible. The lumes are bright and long lasting. And most important of all, have matching color. On top of that, we have the ever reliable NH35 movement powering the watch. Also, despite the big diameter, the watch should fit both small and big wrist sizes. In terms of cons, the biggest two are the QC issues. One is the bloody sharp clasp, the other is the little black dot on the dial. The rest are more like small improvements, like the general finishing of the watch and a tighter bracelet. Despite these negatives, I still think the watch provides great value. If you like turtle watches, then this is definitely a good addition to your collection. After all, it is the only white turtle homage you can get at the moment. As for me, I now know what I want after reviewing this watch. A Captain Willard homage with white indices and matching bezel lume. And that brings us to the end of this video. What do you think about this watch? Would you get it? Or did you already get your hands on one, and how did you like or dislike it? Feel free to drop a comment down below. If you find this video enjoyable or helpful, please drop a like and subscribe for future videos. As a new channel, I really appreciate your support. Until next time!